Hey there, Latin 3 and AP. We've got we've got Caesar, Book 1, Chapter 3. So he's kind of starting to set the table as to the difficulties. He's even named somebody, and that person's name shows up in the nominative, which is an important thing. Caesar very rarely spends the nominative case on Gauls. They're just not full people to him. And so if you take a look, a lot of the verbs that Orgetorix has so far are passive verbs or subjunctive verbs. But also there are several active indicative verbs for him too. So here we are, 1-3. Seduced by these matters, and I say seduced, or you could say influenced or even conned, and deeply moved, intoxicated by the authority of Orgetorix. So he's just really good at talking. They, the Helvetii, decided to prepare, procure, produce those things that were important for setting out, or were necessary for setting out. They decided to purchase, and there's a stacking up of things that they decided, so I'm just saying they decided to again. They decided to purchase as large a number as possible of draft animals and of carts. They decided to make as large a sowing of seeds as possible. In other words, to plant as much grain as possible. So that a grain supply would be available for them for their journey. And they decided to establish peace and alliances with neighboring tribes. They considered a 2-year period, or they decided a 2-year period. They added up, they deduced, they figured out a 2-year period was enough for them to accomplish all of these goals, all of these things. And they established by law that they will depart on the 3rd year. Orgetorix was selected for accomplishing these things. So interesting. He comes to them with a plan, and they're like, hey, can you be in charge of it? He's like, you know what? I think I can. He took upon himself the job of an ambassador to the other tribes on his own. And on his trip, or on his embassy tour, he urges Casticus, the son of Catamantolidas, the Sequanian. So he goes to the Sequani tribe first. He talks to Casticus, the son of Catamantolidas, whose father, so the father of Catamantolidas, had held political power over this, or chieftainship, over the Sequani for many years. So he's talking to basically the grandfather or the grandson of the last chief. Okay, had held chieftainship, and who had been called a friend. So we're talking about Catamantolidas now, and who had been called a friend of the Roman people by the Senate. He, Orgetorix, had urged him, Casticus, to seize the political power in his tribe, which his father had held before. So Catamantolidas also was a chief, but we're like looking back, and it's like, wow, your dad had been chief, your grandfather had been chief, you ought to take over the chieftainship, which his father had held before. And also, or likewise, he, Orgetorix, urges Dumnorix of the Aedui, the Aeduan, who is the brother of Duikiacus, who, Duikiacus, at that time, held the chieftainship in his tribe and was most agreeable to the common people. So, in other words, people really liked their chief. So he, Orgetorix, urged him, Dumnorix, the brother of the chief, to attempt the same thing. So take over from your brother. Orgetorix urges Dumnorix to seize power, basically, from his brother, right? And he's urging Casticus to do the same from whoever took over for his father. And he, Orgetorix, gives to him, Dumnorix, his daughter in marriage. So that's kind of interesting. He's gone around to two other people. He set up a three-man plan, one of whom he binds to himself by marrying his daughter off. This sounds an awful lot like the triumvirate with Caesar, Crassus, and Pompey. He, Orgetorix, shows to them, Casticus and Dumnorix, that in order to accomplish what they were attempting, it would be very easy to do. Because the reason that he himself was going, because for this reason, he himself, Orgetorix, was going to take over the rule in his own tribe, stating that, implying that there was no doubt that the Helvetii were the most powerful of all Gaul. He, Orgetorix, assures them that he will secure their sovereignty for them with the force of his army, or with his forces and with his army. So, hey, take over your stuff. Don't worry, I will help you with my army when I take over. Seduced by this speech, they, Casticus and Dumnorix, pledge an oath, or they give a pledge and an oath amongst themselves. And once they have obtained chieftainship, these three fellows, hope that their three very powerful and strong nations, or now don't use nations, use tribes, can take possession of all of Gaul. And if you look at a map, you'll notice the Sequanii and the Aedui are right next door to the Helvetii. So if you need to move out, you make friends with those people. So was he duping them, or was he saying, join me and together we can rule all of Gaul? It's interesting that it's a triumvirate. It's interesting that it's set up with the marriage of one's daughter to someone else. Caesar is totally telling on himself, but it's a classic ploy of accuse someone else of doing it, and then when they accuse you of actually doing it, what you're doing, then you can say, oh, nice imagination, and you kind of just take the air out of it beforehand. Anyway, that's book 1-3. The table is set for a large uprising. Now you see why Caesar has to get involved. I'm going to hit the button.